Well, hey everybody, West McDonald here, and I got my good friend Randy Dazo with me again for season 2, episode 2 of AI Connect. How are you, Randy?
I'm doing well, West. How are you?
Oh, no complaints whatsoever. I'm kind of getting excited for the July 4th long weekend coming up. So
Do you
I
celebrate
know
that too? I didn't know that.
I do. Yeah, and I was actually having that conversation with someone else this morning. Although I'm Canadian, and that does
Yeah.
raise this. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. So out there in streaming land, let us know where you're watching from. And obviously, I'm in Canada, but the story is, Randy, that because most of my clients are in the US and other parts of the world, we work on Canada Day, knowing full well that we still celebrated on July 4th. So is that bad? I don't know.
I was gonna say, but that's very fair. That's very, very fair. I like it.
Yeah. And so for those that haven't tuned into the live stream before, my name is West McDonald. I'm the founder at GoWest.AI and a proud partner of Keypoint Intelligence and our AI offerings in the channel. And Randy, over to you.
I'm Randy Dazo, Chief Strategy, Operations, and Product Officer at Keypoint Intelligence, who is the premier or leading analyst consulting testing firm for the digital peripherals and solutions industries, as well as AI.
As well as AI. Yeah, it's kind of fun for those that don't know that Keypoint and GoWest have been partnered for quite a while now, delivering AI solutions into the marketplace, and that leads us to the show, right? So make sure as you're going through this, leave your comments and questions. We love them. We want to make sure that we answer them while we're here in the live stream, but also to let you know that this lives forever on LinkedIn. So if you do have questions when you're watching it post live stream, we will get to them. We will answer them. So make sure you leave them, there as well, right? So one of the things that I'm really excited about is we were talking about Randy being in AI now as well, right? Is that we are learning so much about different solution sets to help customers in different areas. And one of the areas that's obviously has some particular needs, outside of the traditional sort of SOC 2 compliance or not sharing data for training, et cetera, is healthcare, right? Like very specific. So, and I know that our guest today, which you're going to bring in a second, I was actually introduced to because I do have a client in the medical space. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that when you look at quote unquote compliance, like SOC 2 compliance or other security compliance, that has nothing to do with HIPAA or other compliance. So we got an expert today that deals specifically with that. So I'm excited to bring him in. And so Josh Spencer, how are you today?
Hey, doing pretty great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being here. And one of the first things that we do, maybe for our audience, introduce yourself, what you do at Forta.Tech, and also let us know where you're joining us from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm joining you today from Dallas, Texas, here in the U.S. Though I am a bit of a road warrior, always out and about, seeing our customers. My background heavily in healthcare, IT, and cybersecurity. So I work for some large health systems, overseeing their cybersecurity programs, overseeing their technology programs, and the like. So obviously, with the onset of ChatGPT, and you started hearing the rumblings here, I'm like, wow, this is an amazing piece of technology that definitely want to get more involved in.
Well, that's great, and that's sort of what brought us together, right? So, one of the things that I want to bring up. So obviously, you're not a ChatGPT user in the medical setting, and your offering actually is something that's like ChatGPT. So maybe talk a little bit about BastionGPT and what does this actually do?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, once we started to see, almost 3 years ago now, this started making waves. I started saying, what is ChatGPT? What can it do? And I started having interviews with folks. So I was working for a large health system at the time, tens of thousands of employees. Said, hey, show me the power users here. Went out in the community, said, hey, who's talking about this? And my jaw dropped because I'm like, wow, this is amazing technology that's going to do some really cool stuff and is doing really cool stuff to help improve some of the patient care that's going on, to help improve some documentation, reduce this doctor burnout and physician medical staff burnout that's happening. But my jaw also dropped because I'm like, oh no, this is a lot of very sensitive data that is going to places that it shouldn't be being used to build AI models, all kinds of compliance issues. So we had a great team. We pulled together to figure out, hey, what solutions are available? And we had conversations with OpenAI and Microsoft and Google and everyone who was trying to play in the space at the time, and realized no one was willing to do it. No one knew how to do it. And so we said, hey, if no one else is out there that can deliver it, we've got a team that can do it. So let's be a part of the solution here. So that's where we said, hey, our initial goal is let's bring a ChatGPT-like experience in a way that can be compliant. We achieved that over 2 years ago. And now our big focus is how do we be even better than ChatGPT? So how do we build healthcare-focused models and responsives that are trained on hundreds of different clinical use cases to give you, and trained on actual clinical data to give you even better responses than what you could get from kind of your off-the-shelf commodity AI models.
Yeah, I'm so glad I found you. Like I said, that's the world Randy and I live in, is trying to solve customer problems, right? And then to come up with AI solutions. And one of the things that we often get is, well, why can't we just use ChatGPT, right? Or why can't we, just do this? And as Randy and I, often share with our clients, that's not always the case, right? And Randy, I got to think, like, so many of our dealers, and just to give you an idea, Josh, that particularly in the office equipment channel, right, that dealers that are working with, clients across all verticals and spectrums, and medical is one of the big ones, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you think, Randy? Like, from this perspective, I haven't really heard a lot of chatter from them about, trying to help their medical customers with AI, right?
Well, I mean, I haven't heard too much, but obviously they should be concerned, and knowing, that they have to be very careful about sensitive information. PHI, obviously is very, very critical there. But at the same time, too, our dealer community is a little bit behind, the traditional corporation that's using AI today. So, but they should, again, start thinking about it, and just don't, start using the regular ChatGPT, the free version, which trains on whatever information that you do provide out there. But especially for certain vertical markets like healthcare, legal, anything that has to, insurance, anything that has to do with personal information, things like that, where, you do have to be a little bit more careful, obviously. Yeah. They should be thinking about it.
But I think I guess my point being that they have a lot of medical customers, right? And
oh yeah, totally.
And I mean, like, we're in the AI business, and it wasn't until, probably 2 months ago when I first started doing research on this that I learned about HIPAA compliant ways to use AI, right? That it wasn't even on my radar. And this is what we do every day, Randy, you and I, right? So that's my point, is I think that this is really an important lesson for, the office equipment dealers and the MSPs and others that we work with, to understand that there is something that they can do with their, clients, right? So it does bring me to this, and maybe explain this for a lot of our, viewers out there, Josh. First of all, what is HIPAA compliant mean anyway? And what does it mean in the age of AI, right? Because in the age of AI, it's a game changer, right? So maybe talk a little bit about both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So HIPAA compliance is essentially the minimum requirements that the US government set for how you handle patient data. So it's broken into multiple chapters. You've got security requirements, privacy requirements, requirements for how organizations like us communicate with our customers and the government. And there's similar analogs for our Canadian and Australian customers that have a lot of overlap. Basically, this means, hey, we're continually scanning our systems to make sure we have all the right privacy and security. In addition to our internal security team, we're hiring outside good guy hackers to make sure our system can't be hacked. And a lot of work to validate all the settings in our system are compliant with the hundreds of different specifications that are out there in regulation, in addition to all the things that we should just be doing because it's important to keep our patient data safe. And basically, we put all of that into a guarantee, or really a legal contract that we call a HIPAA BAA, or a business associate agreement. And again, also similar analogs up there in Canada.
Yep.
And because we only provide our services to healthcare, so all of our services are going to come with that particular BAA. Now, specific to AI, the last major update for HIPAA was all the way back in 2013, when no one knew what AI was going to be capable of. So specific to AI, what that means for us is we don't use patient data to train our models. Unlike many of those non-healthcare services, means we don't resell the data, or we don't introduce features that are going to be likely to cause security breaches or privacy breaches or run afoul of consent documents that healthcare organizations have with their patients.
Yeah, and it's interesting on the on the HIPAA side that there are very few. I mean, you've definitely jumped into a good marketplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I didn't see before, what is PCI DSS?
Yeah, so PCI DSS, that's a payment card industry data security standards.
Okay.
So essentially making sure that, hey, when our customers trust us with credit card data, that we've got all the data that's encrypted and following those regulations.
All right. All right. So I'm gonna move on to another question, and this one may be kind of a tricky one to answer, but I think it's really important because it's one that we get from all of our customers, even when there's not medical information involved, right? Mm-hmm. And that is, what about hallucinations, right? And I'm going to put a caveat in here first, because one of the things that Randy and I have learned, and Randy, you can speak to this, is that hallucinations today are nothing like they were a year ago, right? I mean, that the systems have gotten a lot better, that they've done much better training to try and get away from that in a lot of senses, referencing it, but it does still exist.
It does happen.
Yeah. And, so I wonder, with healthcare, it's pretty high stakes, right? So how do you deal with that problem in that world?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, at this point, you're not dealing necessarily with just purely financial impacts. At this point, these hallucinations or these AI mistakes, things that the AI dreams up that's not grounded in reality, can absolutely cause potential patient safety concerns. So it is a huge issue for us. And really the first person to solve that is going to be overnight a billionaire for sure. But while it's improving, every new generation of AI, as you mentioned, is getting better at that. There are a bunch of things that we can do now and that we are doing now. So one of the big things we look at is, there's a lot of folks out there that build these technologies and they're using AI that was around even 3 months ago. And by many standards, that's a fast, you're keeping up with market. But oftentimes our approach is, hey, if we've got a new AI model, let's rush through our tuning processes and quality assurance processes and get the latest, greatest out there for our folks. We also put a lot of attention in really grounding the responses that the AI provides with all of the underlying clinical data or clinical modeling that we have behind the scenes. It's much more expensive for us to do that process, but at the end of the day, if it's, hey, a few more cents per query, but we're getting a much higher quality response that could improve patient care, then we're all about it. And then we also work to really weight the answers that our AIs give from authoritative data sources. So something like ChatGPT, it's trained on things like UpToDate and WebMD, really good sources, but it's also trained on conspiracy forums and a lot of data that's nowhere near a lot of questions behind what you're looking.
You don't need vaccinations,
No, and that's the last thing that we want to have drafted up into one of our patient charts. So we're definitely big on that. Also leveraging agentic AI, where basically the AI can produce an answer. We then have the AI run basically a validation and check and say, hey, I just said this. Does this seem like it's correct or not? And if it's realizes, oh no, hey, this is incorrect, let me try it again. And if it fails again, then we actually say, we're now going to route to an entirely different AI model, an entirely different set of AI settings to try to reduce or eliminate that hallucination as much as we can.
And I love that you have the option to do that, right? That's the idea, because you're using the best of the best in all base models, right? That you have the power to kind of decide which elements you use, because they come up with different improvements at different times, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's where we're able to draw from a pool of different models, and not just from licensed versions of the actual models that power ChatGPT, but we can even partner with other proprietary, tap into Gemini or Claude or things like that, where we realize, hey, they have a specialty, they have a superpower in certain areas.
I love it. Yeah, and we deal with other partners actually where we do AI orchestrations, where the orchestration table, if you will, for different subsets of the job that it's trying to do, will actually use different pieces of different AIs, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of fascinating. You can only do that with a tool like yours, in which you get to pull the shots, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So hallucinations is one thing, but obviously there's a lot of different problems that can come up. And how important do you think it is to still have humans in the loop, right? Even though we're using AI, this conversation, Randy, that you and I have all the time, right? That, we develop AI policies and guidelines for all of our clients. And one of the things that typically ends up in those policies is that there has to be a human in the loop to do the final overview and the check and, to do those things, right? So how do you feel about that?
Absolutely essential. So if you check our website, we have basically our ethical AI principles, and human in the loop is a big piece of that. So we have our BastionGPT service integrated into dozens of applications from third parties like medical records or standalone apps. And I'd say at least 2 to 3 times a week, we get people phoning us up saying, "Hey, I want a patient-facing app that is going to put this in front of, talk with our patients, help them, obtain some basic information, potentially give them medical advice, all kinds of things that we say, whoa, the technology is just not ready yet for standalone AI doctors, and it'll likely be some time until it is. Until then, we need the FDA to jump on, and they're working on things like regulating AI as medical devices, but there's a lot of examples where this is behaving very poorly. So you've got companies out there like Cody MD that's advertising themselves as a free AI doctor. I saw that ad on my feed on Google, and I checked through it, and I basically gave an example scenario where I said, "Hey, I'm seeing these symptoms," and I intentionally gave it symptoms that they should have sent me straight to the emergency room. But hey, this is a life-threatening condition, and the system basically told me to take some Tylenol. And so, there is so much nuance and so much importance to having a human in the loop, because exactly we talked about earlier, you still have these hallucinations, and it's still not a good replacement for many years of medical school, at least quite yet.
Yeah, and the truth is, I don't care, even if someone on my team produces something, right, that I want to have a view of it before it goes out to the client. And it's not me being a megalomaniac or whatever, but as a team, sometimes we see things that maybe the other person didn't see, right? Mm-hmm. Or why don't we put this line in instead, or let's try it this way. And so the human in the loop is also collaboration, right? That we can collaborate with what the AI is doing. It's not necessarily just checking it for errors, but also, oh, what about this? What if we, did something like this, or updated the language here, right? Those kind of things.
Absolutely. And we have BastionGPT as a part of a number of different clinical trials, research studies that are basically looking at, what type of quality do we see with physicians who are not using any technology when you have just the AI, or where you have a partnership between the AI and the technology. And the research is still ongoing. We have NDAs, but I can say it's looking like a promising future for physicians and healthcare professionals partnering with AI to improve care all around.
Yeah. I don't think we should shy away from it, right, Randy? Just have to be careful.
I mean, there's been a lot of tools out there that, help with self-diagnosis. And it's interesting because my wife likes to pretend she's a doctor, and, she goes onto WebMD. She's like, oh, I have the worst thing, possible that's going on with me. And meanwhile, she goes to the doctor and she finds out it's nothing, so, you definitely have to have that person involved, because, general public aren't doctors. And, I grew up in a family of doctors, and we had all the PDR encyclopedias all over our house, and all that information, I'm sure, is all digitized now. But when you think of it, even though you have all these rules and, you could actually create algorithms to do this, you still should actually have a person that's, looking at this information. I'm actually curious how AI has actually changed that, though, from going from the algorithmic approach of diagnosing to the new AI approach. I think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, anyway, always need a person involved. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think so. And certain job functionalities, especially, I would almost call it supervisory, right? Where we're supervising just like we do with our teams, that I don't think AI is any different as we start to look at it as a valued asset in what we do, right? One of the realities, though, is that there is a bit of a trade-off for usability versus safety. And usually, when you're looking at usability, if you want it on the high end, then you're probably going to sacrifice a little, safety, right? So I would say that, the usability of something like ChatGPT for, most people, because all they're doing is just typing in the chat window, is probably pretty high. But I would argue that it's not, always very safe. On the other hand, if you want to be so restrictive because of compliance and everything else, there has to be some usability impacted as well, right? So maybe talk a little bit about that, how, you know, BastionGPT, how you balance that, how you walk that tightrope.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly if you've used any of the modern LLM, ChatGPT, Gemini, things like that, you'll know it is your best hype man. It is everything that you say is going to be amazing and brilliant. And part of that is because these companies basically tailored the AI to give you the answer you most want to hear, not the answer you most need to hear. So there's stories about people going on and saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about committing suicide," or some of these very dark things, and the AI is like, "Oh, great for thinking out of the box, absolutely," and just like things that a human would in no way ever encourage, because the industry in general has trended way too heavy to this usability or the likability of the AI, which is a big part of how we take some of these models and we customize them for the proper context in healthcare, where we have much more of an emphasis on what is the data that's grounded in science and grounded in actually what you should be hearing versus what you want to hear at the end of the day. You've got some models that do really well at writing things where their priority is what's going to be an easy read versus what at the end of the day, the importance of generating clinical documentation is that it's correct and not that it feels easy to read.
Yeah, and I've experienced that as well, right? That it tries to be so positive about everything that that you put into it, when sometimes it would be nice if it actually said, "Whoa, Wes, wait a minute, like, are you sure about this?" Or it's that would be nice too, right? If you're looking for that help. So I love the idea that within Bastion, that really it's fine-tuned to that sort of clinical perspective, right? That as you would expect from a medical professional, right? That they're not going to tell you it's a good idea if you want to eat 6 steaks and hamburgers and French fries every day and say, "Oh, that's great. What a wonderful way to treat yourself." They'll say, "Well, did you know?" I mean, we'll have that, right? Yeah. And so what kind of things have you seen from a safety perspective, like lessons that you've learned over time? Like what kinds of things have you said, "Oh, wow, that's we just saved the day here. Look at this," those kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the really interesting things that we see as the basically our user population matures. Originally, we saw a lot of very tech advanced. Hey, I want the latest, greatest technologies, and they're like, "Yeah, hey, I'm willing to learn." A lot of what we hear now is people who say, "Oh, I hate technology. Technology hates me. Gets us away from me." But all of a sudden, I heard, "Hey, my colleague is using BastionGPT, and now she's getting home earlier. Her documentation, she's getting compliments on all the time." So a big part of what we basically what we're doing for some of our folks able to. Sorry, I just had a brain dump. Can you ask the question again?
Oh, that's okay. No, I like what you're saying though, is that people are using it because it's easier, right? Like that it's giving them time back in their day, that they actually, that it's actually having an impact, right? And that wasn't available to them before, because before something like BastionGPT, then they'd be just like, "I can't use it. Like it's not available to me as an option to be able to help with what I'm doing," right?
Yeah,
Absolutely. And the idea was just with safety, like if you've seen any things out there where people have been doing things one way and then finally find BastionGPT and say, "Oh, thank goodness, now I can use this," right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, I'm back on my train of thought now.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, where we have folks that are like, "Hey, no, I absolutely can't use it." We like to introduce them to AI using what we call kind of a safety net of, "Hey, let me take your existing documentation. You might not want to touch AI. You might think it's not safe. Let's run it through some of the documentation that you've already given patients, that you've already put in the medical chart." And people's jaws consistently drop when they start to realize, like, "Oh, I didn't realize the way I worded this. It could be very confusing to the patient for how I should take my medicine." Or, "Oh, hey, I didn't," everything from major, "Hey, you've got big mistakes," to people not realizing, how often they refer to the patient as the wrong name, or more of these style preferences where some people say, "Hey, I don't want to use gendered pronouns." They don't realize how many times they're doing that type of thing. So the AI being used very quickly goes from this idea of, "Oh, I don't know, there's a lot of safety issues with AI. I don't know if we should be using it." Once we have these users, even the ones who are the most hesitant or against it, they very quickly change their tone to realize, all of a sudden I don't feel safe if I'm not using your BastionGPT, or I don't feel safe if I'm not using this AI technology to help catch some of the mistakes that all of us as humans actually make.
Yeah, and even if they're not mistakes, right, Randy? Like if if it's just the way that we talk, which may be over the head of somebody, and it can actually help us say, like, I love your example. Like, hey, wait a minute, they might not understand it said this way. This is probably a more comprehensive, simpler set of instructions for a real human, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly, you have a lot of doctors that might be great doctors, but if they know, hey, I've got 45 seconds to write this particular note, you're not getting any bedside manner, you're not building any rapport. So the idea of using our technology where you can train the AI, hey, this is how I like to write notes, this is my writing style, but it can add, it can soften up some of the rough edges there and help them take what would have been a 5-minute writing of a note into a really quick draft that they spend a few seconds to help polish up.
But even like coding and stuff like that, where it could like fit into a number of different codes, where even like this type of solution can actually really help you to determine, which code to actually put it down as, instead of just guessing, or actually guessing the wrong thing that could actually be a lot more expensive than something else.
Absolutely. And that's some of the big use cases we see is basically letting the AI know if it's not already trained on data, like payer data, to say, okay, this is what generally constitutes a proper coding. Hey, here's my notes. And it can AI can always make mistakes, but what we find is very high levels of accuracy around, hey, you didn't note anywhere in your record that you performed this service. Here's what Blue Cross requires for this.
Right.
Did this happen or not? And so you can absolutely realize, oh, hey, it happened. I just forgot to note it. And now you're avoiding the process of, okay, now I've got to appeal this. Now, all this extra paperwork, because the AI is able to very quickly call out certain things.
That's fascinating.
If you do find yourself in a position where you do need to file some appeal documentation, that's where, our systems as well can quickly generate a letter based on your clinical notes, patient charts, even full transcripts, or having our service actually ambiently record the session and put together all these notes in a way that can save a lot of time and headache for both the healthcare professional and the patient as well.
I mean, that's a game changer right there. Like all the paperwork, the administrative work that goes behind the healthcare systems, the billing and all that, and the denials and having to submit and stuff like that. If all that can be automated, that's huge. For the healthcare industry itself.
Yeah. And it's a point where practitioners who don't have this technology are really behind the curve now, because all of the payers are using AI technology to help find. And so if you left out this one part that was needed as part of their standards, they will find it and they will reject it. So it's important that everyone start to use this technology, or at least begin to get some familiarity with it.
I love it. And listen, in respect for your time, I want to finish off with one last question. And it's kind of looking into the future, right? So I think we talked a little bit about it, but maybe look ahead in your crystal ball, and what do you see in healthcare and how AI, may make a difference?
Absolutely. It's definitely a continued partnership between the physician healthcare professionals with AI to help make healthcare more accessible. We look at the average scenario now where, the ER physician might have 5 minutes to interact with the patient. There's tons of questions that the patients have at the end of the day that they're not getting answered. So how to make that process where maybe AI can do some initial patient education, it can do some initial screening, it can interact, get you comfortable with the terms that you're about to be speaking to your physician with, so that if you only have that small amount of time with the physician, you're able to do more. Or if your physician only meets with you for 5 minutes because they've got to spend 20 minutes documenting your case, well, if AI can now get your documentation done in 5 minutes, that's so much more time that you have to meet face-to-face with your healthcare professional that you wouldn't have otherwise had. So we love to see those success stories now. When we have some clinical studies that are going on that are showing even what we can do, even more in the future. It's just, it's amazing. We're really excited to be a part of seeing this technology do really great things.
But can AI read doctors' handwritings? That's the big question.
that is a big problem to solve. We actually do remarkably well. We have our models in many cases better than what I can read. When I give it some documentation, I can't read this scribble, and oftentimes the AI can somehow work its magic.
Yeah, because it's writing in some kind of shorthand anyway, right? So even though it's messy, it's kind of like, okay, this is a known shorthand. I'm pretty sure it's this.
Or at least it's validation. Sometimes I'll give it to the AI. I'm like, I can't read this. And if the AI says that it can't read it, I know, okay, it's not just me. It's an actual problem with the data.
And I guess like doctors are still doing dictation and stuff like that. And your solution actually does the transcription, summarizes it, all that stuff, which is really, really cool. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. The ability to give even richer notes. So the physician is sitting there directly interacting with the patient, thinking about what needs to get done, as opposed to, okay, I need to note this down, or okay, maybe I'll put this in this section, and can focus 100% of their brain cells on working with the patient, unless, okay, I'm going to have to document this or that.
Well, so appreciate you being on the show today, Josh. And in respect for your time, we're at the end of our program, and just want to make sure that people understand that they can look for BastionGPT, BastionGPT.com. And of course, you can reach out to Randy or I if you want to learn more about AI in the age of healthcare. Now you can actually start to look at solutions like this for your healthcare clients, right? Because I guarantee you, Josh, there's going to be a bunch of people watching this today saying, I had no idea. This is great. So check it out, BastionGPT.com. Of course, don't forget to visit Keypoint Intelligence, doing so many incredible things with AI and other solutions, obviously, for your business. So be sure to check them out. Of course, you can always visit us at GoWest.AI, learn a little bit more about what we do, how we partner with Keypoint Intelligence, and work with providers like Josh. So once again, Josh, cannot thank you enough for joining in today. One of the things that we always do is Randy and I both have taglines we finish with. So you'll have to think of one as for yourself as Randy and I deliver ours. I always say, until next time, keep learning.
And also be curious.
And?
Oh, way too early for haven't had my caffeine yet, but yeah, let's be a part of your healthcare AI solution.
I love it. Perfect. Well, Josh, once again, thank you very much. And for all of our viewers, those that are listening in, either watching on LinkedIn or on our YouTube channel, can't thank you enough. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.